In the vast landscape of modern boxing, there are only a few names that command universal respect, names that seem to defy weight classes, time zones, and eras. Among them is Terence "Bud" Crawford, a 37-year-old phenom from Omaha, Nebraska, who has carved his legacy with fists, finesse, and an almost frightening degree of precision. He isn't just another world champion. Crawford is a puzzle wrapped in muscle and instinct, a technician and predator blended into one. And according to many respected voices in the boxing community, Bud stands shoulder to shoulder with other generational titans like Alexander Usyk and Naoya Inoue. To witness Terence Crawford in the ring is to witness controlled chaos. At first glance, he may not look like the most intimidating man in the world. No outrageous bravado. No posturing or shouting. But once the gloves are strapped and the bell rings, something clicks. He becomes a predator in motion, measured, patient, calculating. He isn't just quick, he's precise. He isn't just strong, he's devastating. And above all, he is versatile. It's this versatility that sets him apart. Crawford has mastered the rare gift of switching stances fluidly, throwing his opponents into a fog of confusion. Southpaw. Orthodox. He's fluent in both. On his feet, he moves like a phantom, always a half-beat ahead of his adversary's rhythm. His defense is watertight, his footwork elegant, and his timing nearly psychic. When he throws, he doesn't just aim for a target. He unravels an entire game plan with a single punch. And those punches, they're powered not only by muscle, but by calculation and menace. His left and right carry equal weight, literal and symbolic. If Crawford touches you clean, he might just shut off the lights. But perhaps the most chilling part of Terence Crawford's repertoire is his finishing instinct. Once he smells blood, once he senses a shift in his opponent's posture or eyes, he closes the show. With 11 stoppages in his last 12 fights, Crawford doesn't let opportunities linger. He hunts, he seizes, and he finishes. There is no hesitation. There is no mercy. Just a professional execution of opportunity, fight after fight. And yet, for all his accolades, Crawford has never let fame dull his hunger. He is a conqueror of 4 weight divisions, each one a new battlefield where he left no doubt. Still, his ambition doesn't rest. As whispers of a showdown with Saul Canelo Alvarez grow louder, the world watches to see if Crawford can ascend to an even more rarefied realm, becoming the undisputed champion in a 3rd weight class. A feat so absurdly difficult, it reads more like myth than plan. But before that storm brews, let's step back to one of the defining moments that reaffirmed Bud Crawford's dominance, the night he returned to Omaha to face an unlikely challenger who had more bite than bark. The fall of 2022 was supposed to be different. Fans had grown impatient waiting for the Crawford vs. Errol Spence mega-fight to finally materialize. Talks had heated up, promises made, posters perhaps even quietly drafted. But negotiations collapsed, again, leaving the boxing world in another cycle of frustration. Still, Crawford didn't sulk. Inactivity wasn't an option. He needed a fight, something to keep the fire stoked and the gears turning. Enter David Avanesyan, an Armenian fighter with a Russian passport and a chip on his shoulder the size of a championship belt. Not a household name, not the blockbuster opponent everyone wanted, but far from a pushover. In fact, for those who paid attention to boxing's deeper cuts, Avanesyan was dangerous. The kind of fighter who thrived in silence, unbothered by hype, fueled by grit. His resume was modest on the surface, but full of hard-earned scars. He'd held the interim world title and reigned as European champion. More importantly, he had a knack for upsetting expectations. His knockout wins over Kerman Lejarraga and Josh Kelly had flipped pre-fight predictions upside down, as both bouts saw him come in as the underdog and leave with his hand raised. But his most talked about victory, a decision win over the legendary Shane Mosley. Yes, it came when Mosley was well past his prime, but still, Avanesyan had stood toe-to-toe with a Hall of Famer and walked away with the wind, of course. His journey hadn't been without setbacks. He'd suffered defeats, one notably to former champion Lamont Peterson, but even those losses spoke volumes about the level he operated at. He wasn't crashing the gate. He belonged in the building. And now, he was being handed the opportunity of a lifetime, a shot at Terence Crawford. A chance to be more than a respected veteran. A chance to be remembered. As the December 10th date approached, the build-up was quieter than usual. No world tour. No bad blood. But in the gyms and newsrooms, in the bars and basements where boxing is still talked about like gospel, interest simmered. This was Crawford returning home. Omaha wasn't just a backdrop, it was part of the story. The crowd wasn't just attending, they were invested. Avanesyan arrived with steel in his eyes. Confident, sure, but not cocky. He'd earned this shot and believed he could shock the world. He told anyone who would listen that he was in peak condition, that he had the tools to pull off a major upset. Crawford, ever the professional, didn't engage in trash talk. He simply promised to be ready for whatever came his way, and meant every word of it. From the opening bell, Avanesyan made it clear, he hadn't come to collect a paycheck. He pressed forward with aggression and commitment. In the early rounds, he found moments, landing clean hooks, stepping in fearlessly. There were flashes of danger, glimmers of hope. He wasn't overwhelmed. Not yet. But those who had watched Crawford long enough knew the pattern. The early rounds are his reconnaissance mission. He downloads information, studies habits, reads reactions. He lets opponents breathe, just enough rope. And then, as if a light switches on, he begins to shift. By round 4, that shift had begun. Crawford's eyes narrowed. His movement sharpened. He wasn't retreating anymore. He was navigating. Every jab now carried intention. Every feint demanded a response. The fight was beginning to take on a different tone, and Avanesyan, for all his courage, began to feel it. He was still throwing, still competing, but the air was getting thinner. The ring, smaller. By round 5, the writing was on the wall. Crawford was stepping into his punches, controlling the exchanges, cutting off the ring. Avanesyan, for the first time, looked like he was thinking about survival instead of victory. His head movement slowed. His legs weren't reacting the same. He was still in it, but the storm was getting closer. And then came round 6. It started like the others. Jabs, movement, feints. Then, Crawford found the window. A crisp uppercut from the left snapped Avanesyan's head back. Just a heartbeat later, Crawford followed with a right hook so precise and powerful it seemed to land in another dimension. The challenger collapsed, lifeless and limp. The crowd gasped. The referee waved it off before the count even reached its midpoint. It took several tense moments before Avanesyan was back on his feet. A hush had fallen over the arena, replaced slowly by an ovation of awe and admiration. Crawford didn't celebrate wildly. He never does. He simply stood still, a man who had done his job again. That night was more than a win. It was a statement, a reminder. Terence Crawford didn't need a grudge match or a mega fight to show his greatness. He simply needed a ring, an opponent, and a reason. And when given those 3 things, he turned potential danger into undeniable dominance, and the aftermath, fans and pundits began to buzz again. If this is what Crawford does to dangerous contenders like Avanesyan, what could he do against bigger names? Against Canelo? Against the myth of limits? Terence Crawford's career is a study in persistence and patience. He has never been boxing's loudest star, but perhaps its most consistent. He doesn't shout. He doesn't plead for recognition. He just wins. Emphatically. Ruthlessly. over and over. And while critics and fans alike debate pound-for-pound rankings, legacy points, and historical standing, Crawford seems uninterested in the noise. His eyes remain fixed on the future, on new challenges, on history still waiting to be made. If the stars align and the Canelo fight comes to pass, it won't just be another super fight. It'll be the crescendo of a career built brick by brick, fight by fight. But even if it never materializes, Terence Crawford has already written his name in boxing story, not in ink, but in indelible, thundering punches. Because when the bell rings and Bud Crawford takes that first step forward, what follows isn't just a fight, it's an unraveling. A lesson. A symphony of violence and beauty, written by a man who understands the craft like few ever have. And there's still more to come.